You dug out the door and went for pigeons. You know it's it as the road. And the fine and current story that my state to see. Just like the phonetic guitar, cause mine runs deep.
Money, greed, power, Tsars. Or Tsars, power, greed and money. Which is the correct path to follow? Some powerful and influential people tend to lack imagination. They devote most of their energy to make hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, become high-profile business executives or elected officials. They eventually rise to prominence and become role models for many. Yet, at some point, they end up having sex with Russian prostitutes. That's such an ordinary thing to do. Anyone could do that. The only advantage to being rich or powerful is that you can associate with someone like Jeffrey Epstein, who in their own way take control of your reputation and pin your name down in history. If you have people like Epstein in your life, you will most certainly be remembered as a disgraced public figure. The stain on your reputation will spread to your family, which is unfair because they didn't choose for you to engage in dirty and often illegal sexual activities with underage people. If you avoid Epstein-type people, however, you can build on your reputation and achieve a whole different level. Why would someone rich and powerful risk their reputation? Why? Well, it is human nature to aim for what you don't have, what we don't have. Money plus power equals to greed. Next is crossing any possible boundary. More often than not, the boundary lies in the realm of the prohibited. The reward for rich and powerful is to cross the line. Do anything that regular people cannot do and get away with it. At the end of the day, it is us who are depreciated. It feels like the only purpose of laws is to restrain us. So why do we pay so much attention to people who claim to be extraordinary, yet have the same vices and fall into the same traps as us? What is so special about people who do the same things we do when they want to have fun, except that they pay more for it? It is the feeling that you are sitting on top of everyone else, that you are entitled to tear out whichever page of human law you want. This is what Epstein's gang did for 2 decades. They had the means, money and power, and they were overtaken by greed. They aimed for Tsarist status, to be Tsars. They took the money, power, greed and Tsar path. The Epstein files that the US Department of Justice is playing with are useful for 2 things. First, they expose the nature of power and money and of those who possess them. Second, they offer a valuable lesson, even for the ordinary people like us, ordinary folks. We must choose our peers and people in our circle very, very carefully and avoid those who like taking notes. If we look at the bigger picture, it is important how the money, power, greed, Tsar model is unfolding in our societies and in the US in particular. The Roman Republic and the subsequent Roman Empire are the closest historical examples of a mighty form of statehood that resembles United States. I mean, there was a slavery in the Roman world, wasn't there? Nevertheless, the 19th century Americans deserve a credit for abolishing slavery and replacing it with a racial segregation, which lasted for another century, 100 years, until 1964. We must also give credit to the Romans for applying the principles of racial equality to slavery, unlike modern Europeans and Americans. Roman slavery wasn't based on skin color or the subjugation of one race by another. Rather, it was based on conquest, debt, and birth. That sounds fairer to me. Subjugating and enslaving people is wrong. However, theoretically, subjugation hurts less when a certain degree of ethics and racial equality is applied. Going back to the Romans, they had a representative legislature comprising a Senate and popular assemblies. America has a Senate and a House of Representatives. In fact, the Roman model of government was probably more balanced in terms of executive power, as there are two councils who held it. They could block each other's decisions through a system of mutual veto. Unlike our modern presidents, the Roman consuls were elected annually. Do you know when the Roman state began to decline? When the republic transformed into an empire. From restricted executive power, the power became unrestricted. The next step of decline came when the Roman elite became complacent. Yes, the Roman Republic applied the principles of restricted and balanced government powers. The concepts of representative power, limited governmental authority, and most importantly, an independent judiciary have applied to the United States ever since its founding until recently. The Roman-style eagle on the US Great Crest represents power, authority, and divine protection. Now, in 2026, the first two, power and authority, are unfolding more than ever. However, there is one problem that is quite impossible to explain. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, represents the government's power, which is representative, not divine. These powers are held and executed by people who promised to protect US citizens from aliens. Why does ICE kills Americans instead of aliens then? When you hold executive power and aim to protect the citizens from aliens, you are supposed to stop people and ask them to identify themselves. Then let Americans go and kill the aliens only. But that's not what's happening. I think I know why. It is all about knowledge and terminology. President Trump appointed a US border Tsar. That is exactly the problem. Tsar is a Russian thing. Tsars are usually busy terrorizing their own subjects. They invade their countries and kill people from time to time, just as Putin is doing in Ukraine. But when they act at home, they kill their own people. They can do that because their legitimacy comes from God, not the people. Here we come, Tsars and Tsarism. Since the arrival of the first settlers, America has always been the opposite of Tsarism. 250 years ago, people living in British colony established a unique federal form of government and to reject any form of authoritarian rule. Now, 2.5 centuries later, the very same country has a border Tsar. The problem lies in the terminology. If you choose Tsars, you get Tsars. There is another problem. It is the direction. The right direction is Tsars, power, greed, money. This is how the Western form of government evolved historically. For a century, there were no Tsars. Now it looks like that the things are going the opposite direction. Money, greed, power, and Tsars. Have you ever wondered what the next social order model will be? So-called Western civilization, and the United States in particular, has had a system of statehood with a constitutionally limited government, checks and balances, and legislative institutions that supervise the government. Most importantly, we have tried an independent judiciary. This system worked very well in Europe and North America for about 80 years, and on a global scale after the World War II. So why are many people then frustrated with their governments? Frustrated enough to want a change, a big change, to change their government structures and sometimes their political fundamentals and even constitutions. It is probably because they feel economically vulnerable and are tired of social change and diversity. It also seems to me that simply because people of different ethnicities are coming in large numbers from everywhere to our countries, we have decided to pull the plug. We have shifted the focus from the problems inside our own countries, problems with our economies and the rich, powerful and greedy elites, to the problems that aliens would bring when they come to our lands. Many of these aliens lack cultural awareness, that's true. Many of them are intolerant themselves towards our cultures and simply want to take advantage of the favorable economic conditions. Some of them, not all of them, however. At the same time, our countries are full of ignorant, intolerant and primitive minds. Yes, we also have nasty homegrown people, born and raised, as they say. We have learned from them and institutionalized our intolerance. And we created something that in the UK call border protection and immigration policy. The key phrase is immigration policy. It is a fancy term that bureaucrats use to express their intolerance of diversity, xenophobic and often racist attitudes. Border protection, I understand this. People pay taxes just to watch groups of 18-year-old Arabs invade and settle around them, giving everyone nasty looks. It is not fair. It's not fair. Why do we have those borders in the first place? And why do we spend so much money on various law enforcement agencies? No matter who comes or what happens, the police get paid. Americans are lucky to be surrounded by Canadians, Mexicans, and fish. We Europeans have the Arabs. In the eastern part of the continent, we have been fighting them ever since they came into existence. In the western part of the continent, Europeans fought the Moors for 8 centuries. We had a border protection policy at the time, we really had. Europe has historically struggled with the Arabs. The conflict was intense and required a lot of energy and focus. Without those, the Spanish-Moorish wars, without those wars, Catholic Church wouldn't have been distracted for so long. The Padres could have started burning beautiful and smart women much earlier. So, the Arabs are to blame for the Catholic burning those women for 3 centuries only. It could be longer. The Catholic Church has always been a Tsarist style of an institution. By the time the burnings ended, the Church badly needed reform, thanks to the 16th century religious reformation and the emergence of Protestants. A significant innovation occurred. in America. American Protestants who escaped Catholic persecutions engaged in a witch hunting themselves to demonstrate that this was the new world and that things were changing. The American Protestants made significant progress during the Salem witch trials. They refused to burn their witches and instead of this, hanged them. Innovations always come from the West, even though the things have recently been produced in China. Meanwhile, by the late 16th century, the Catholic Church had evolved to the point that it was killing not just women, but everyone. The Church did this because it was a Tsarist institution entitled to oppress the population. Just like ICE officers are entitled to shoot fellow Americans. It is not just today. Historically, powerful and influential people have lacked imagination. They have always been busy oppressing and killing people, even when there was no logical reason to do so. This is what people in power do. And sometimes, like Epstein's peers, they go with Russian prostitutes. History is full of Jeffrey Epstein type of people, the servants of powerful men. But they're not that important. The important thing is to prevent the historical progression of Tsar, greed, power, money scheme from turning backwards into money, power, greed, Tsar model of social development. Money easily turns into power, which turns into greed. Greed then results in even more power, and then we become complacent. The power creates Tsars.